Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MHA Arc Review. It's been a hot minute, but hey, we are back, and by we, I mean myself and IanWaffles, who always graces us with his presence for these special episodes. Hi, Ian, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How long has it been since the last one?
I've no clue. I think last time we spoke, the ocean cut wasn't a thing yet, so it's been a hot minute.
Oh wow, yeah, I forgot. You're like a superstar now. I thank you for having me still.
I'm a D-list micro-celebrity inside of a niche at best, but thank you. And hey, I always love having you here. If you don't know, folks, or you haven't seen the last few episodes, Ian is the guy when it comes to MHA, more so than I am, frankly. I couldn't give two shits about that series nowadays. Ocean's exposed, hashtag. But anyway, what are we here for today, Ian?
Well, unfortunately for you, we are back to talk about My Hero Academia, and this time we are talking about the Kamino Ward arc. We split the camp arc into its own separate thing last time, so if you're kind of like someone who you usually kind of read these together, then you can kind of go watch that. But then also, again, my name is IanWaffles. I have my own channel by the same name and same Twitter handle. I make pretty much whatever I want, and I never upload, but recently I've been making Kingdom Hearts videos, specifically on Kingdom Hearts 2. So if any of that interests you, you can go there, and if you are still someone who really loves MHA, you can go watch my Overhaul video and my Airy video, which I still think hold up pretty well for those characters, because they have not changed since then, which is a godsend, so that's pretty good.
Simpler times.
Indeed. But yeah, we're talking about Kamino. So should we jump right in, or is there anything else?
Well, I think we can just start with a question. The question being the one that's in the title. Do you agree with the sentiment that Kamino is where MHA peaked?
Absolutely not. I think that MHA peaked at the Gentle Criminal arc, and not in terms of that arc being the best, but I think it's the peak of the thing I was most invested in, which is Deku and his kind of character progression. So, assuming we get to that within our lifetimes with the rate these are coming out, I will definitely want to talk about that more there. But I think for Kamino itself, I think it is definitely one of the peaks of the series. I would say this, along with the Pro Hero arc with Endeavor, which is kind of a mirror of this, so that's kind of where it gets a lot of its gravitas, along with this personal stuff. And then I think Overhaul arc and the Gentle Criminal arc combined is the peak of the series for me. But the Kamino Ward arc itself, I know a lot of people, they say like this is where it drops off, and I think a lot of that has to do with its kind of main focus, which aside from all these other characters running around, it's really the All Might arc. Or the All Might battle. And so I think since a lot of people loved him, especially with the anime coming out before, or season 1 at least, by the time I think this was coming out, there's a lot of hype around this character, there's a lot of love for this character, and I think this arc definitely leans into that, but we'll have to get to that battle first. Before we start, I do want to say that there are going to be spoilers for the entire MHA series and manga and anime, so if you do not want to be spoiled, know that in advance. We are not sticking strictly to this arc.
Yes, we are cognizant and aware of the future. So there's that. But how
do you feel about the peak?
I mostly agree with you. I think Kamino is kind of, how do I put it? It's like an arc that is very easy to like because it has everything that makes shonen arcs great. It has a fantastic battle. It has a lot of very cool shonenisms. Plans that go wrong, plans that don't go wrong, villains that show new sides of themselves. It has everything that you need for a good shonen arc, and you combine it with, as you said, All Might, a tremendously popular character at the time. It just makes for a great mix. As far as peaks go throughout the entire series, I'm not sure. I feel like MHA rarely had like peak arcs and more like peak eras almost. Like I feel like the whole section between Forest arc and this was definitely something that I would consider a peak. Then you have the entire stretch from Overhaul, honestly from Deku versus Bakugo part 1 all the way through Overhaul, Gentle Criminal, and Pro Hero. I would consider that another peak era. And then honestly even My Villain Academia all the way up to Dobby's Dance I would consider another sort of peaked era where it's not really even limited to arcs, but sort of just Hori delivering continuously for a somewhat extended period of time.
Well, and especially since the Dobby's dance, sorry to cut you off. From the My Villain to Dobby's dance, that one especially is like a kind of a high for the series, because that's when it tragically got canceled, and it's like there was so much like untapped potential, but I really feel like it went out on a high note, you know?
Yeah, it was very bold of the series to end with the Dobby reveal. That was crazy.
And when he just like shot fire down and killed all the main characters, and like Shigaraki
including
turned
himself.
his head. I told everybody spoilers. You know, when Shigaraki turned his head and he went, "Bro, WTF?" And then like it said like 10 years later, and like it like showed Kota walking. He was like, "This is My Hero Academia." I kind of cried. So.
Yeah, that was very, very emotional. I mean, we'll get to that once we get to the final arc, which is called Dobby's Dance, obviously. But first, of course,
go watch Ocean's video about the lead up.
Yes, exactly. Go watch the Dobby experience. Ignore all the parts where I talk about the future. There is no future.
Yeah, there is no future, unfortunately. But you know, I think it worked out in the end.
Yes. All right. So Kamino arc. Where do we start off? Do you want to set the scene?
Yeah. So last time, all the kids got wrecked, and it was really funny. And Bakugo has been snatched by the villains. And so we kind of have this little section of the manga where we kind of get a look at how all the characters are feeling in the hospital. And I really, really enjoy this section for basically being the culmination for arcs of Ida, Todoroki, Momo also, and a little bit of a start to Kirishima and his character. And I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody. I said Deku. But yeah, all these characters kind of actually having to interact and like bounce off where they're at in their hero progression and kind of coming to a conclusion, which we can kind of go into the moment to moment of that. But I think the big standouts are definitely Ida and Deku's scene, kind of showing that they all think like, oh, he's just upset about us like breaking the rules. And he's like, no, you idiot. You're like my brother. I love you, and I will punch you until you realize this. I just don't want you to die. And that's a really great moment, and just kind of the idea of Momo wanting to go because she's also kind of had that moment in the test arc and in the camp where she felt like this is finally like the culmination of her feeling like she needs to do something, like she's not going to just like be caught in her own head. And then obviously Kirishima wants to go to help Bakugo, and then Shoto just wants to go because he's just like, well, yeah, duh, idiot, because he's Todoroki and he's great. But I really like this part of the manga, and you have the argument between the students. So if there's anything you wanted to talk about this section, go for it.
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest things this section does is just marinate a little in how big of a deal it is that a student got caught. Because I feel like it would have been very easy to just move on immediately, to be like, okay, this is a rescue operation. But we get like 2 full chapters of just like focusing on how hard this hits the public and also the students. And I think that's something that is immensely valuable to something like MHA. Just like before you hit the trigger on something as cool as the big battle, to first do a little bit of build up, do a little bit of quiet time. You know, like just what is it, like 5 whole pages or 4 whole pages of just Deku in his little silly hospital bed, just being sad about things. And then the kids come in and they're like, hey, we're trying to cheer you up. And Deku's like, I don't care, I'm crying. And I just think that's very important to something like this. You need to have this almost a sine wave of downtime and uptime, downtime and uptime. And I think what makes this downtime even more impactful is, as you said, how much it delivers on character work. You know, you have Ida, who almost has like his goofy, go by the rules attitude recontextualized as genuine worry, at least in this case. And thus sort of makes his character seem a lot more like a lot more serious and a lot more believable than it had for, well, basically since the Stain arc. And I think that's really important because Ida is a cool character. And, you know, you did all that work with the Stain arc and his brother, and it's cool to see that followed up on. Because of course he would feel like that, right? Like, of course, seeing Deku broken and battered and still trying to go after the villains would evoke flashbacks of both his brother and himself. Like MHA, we talked about this a little bit before we started the show, but MHA used to have this wonderful, wonderful feature to itself where it would take a situation, think about it as logically as possible, like what character would react to this in what way, and just do it, regardless of what the consequences were, and just live with whatever came out of it. Like if you think about the scene where Ida punches Deku, that's kind of a big scene, and it is both logically deduced from Ida's feelings and then followed up on in a way that feels very sincere, with Ida being like, I care, I'm very worried, and I know I can't stop you, so I'm going to come with you to monitor you. And it's then, also sort of balanced out with a couple of gags. And yeah, I also, this is not as cerebral, but I really appreciate that the manga is not subtle at all about how gay Kirishima is for Bakugo. It is so funny.
It's like, whoa, we weren't reading into this at all.
Yeah, like they're just bros. Like they're just bros that like each other so much. I will literally go almost die to save you, and then I will be the only person you listen to forever.
Who will hold your hand.
Yes, under the moonlight. In front
of the moonlight, and since it's the kind of spicy you like, Bakugo, around a villain fire. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No. Oh, sorry. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I was just gonna say that, yeah, I also agree with everything that you said also about Momo. Like, I like that she's present in this arc. She doesn't do all that much, but it's good enough. Like, she doesn't need to be more important for now, in my opinion. She's fine as is.
Should have given her a moment in the escape where it's like, I will give you rollerblades, everybody who's going on the ice. Like legitimately, he could have come up with just like an item to give them.
True, yeah.
But other than that, I appreciate her being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, another thing I really appreciate is what All Might says to her when he finds out about the tracker, where he's like, Aizawa told me that you struggle with acting in the moment. Now look at you. That's very sweet. That's very sort of, yes, All Might is the dad, even though he fucks up sometimes.
Yes, for sure. He goes out and he gets milk. He just gets lost, and that's why it takes him a little longer to get home.
Yes,
because he's dumb.
Exactly. Yes, he's dumb. He's not malicious. But yeah, no, I really appreciated that, and I think this pretty much concludes the students section, so we can actually move on if you want to.
Well, I had one more thing, which is I just wanted to elaborate on the thing you had said about like things go logically, because I think to some people they might be like, no duh, it did the bare minimum of a story that I'm looking for. They acted logically. But I think what we had talked about and you didn't mention is that it'll be logical at the cost of not just like that just being what it is and you have to deal with it, but it'll do it at the cost of like rawness and swag, where it's like it's like, wouldn't it have just been cooler if like everyone just kind of agreed, like if Ida and Momo are gonna go anyway, right, to maybe like a normal like reader of the story who's just kind of here for like a fun adventure, they might say like, well, if they're just gonna go anyway, then just have them.
What was the point?
Yeah, well, just have them like. Just be like, yeah, I agree, let's go get our boy back, and that would be cooler. But instead you have this little argument, and then it leads to them going anyway, so what's the point? And I would argue, because when there later is a point, which I think I'll just talk about now, since it kind of wraps this whole thing up. But before that, MHA will do this often, where it just focuses on the characters, and I think that, again, goes into what we talked about in part 1 of the series, where it's like, if you don't buy into, like, it being about Deku and him as a person, or you don't buy into, like, let's have fun with these kids and kind of go like through their micro progressions as people, then yeah, that's just going to be annoying. But that's, to me, what made My Hero Academia so good, was that it was a school setting, even when they weren't in school. And so these micro little realizations, even for the villains, where Shigaraki goes from, I want to kill All Might, to, wait, I want to kill All Might, but I have like I could probably write it down and give you a reason. I'm a genius. I have grown. And it's like, yes, Shigaraki. Oh, let's go. And then to everybody else, they're like, oh my gosh, I hate this series. But that's what I loved. And so that's the kind of thing that I think these scenes embody, is like, even though it would be cooler to do these other things, My Hero Academia will just have this little scene that, in a sense, kind of just goes in a circle, but the whole point of it was to get that character to realize that they needed to do a thing. Same thing with later when we talk to, Deku's mom, which we'll get to. But to wrap up this little idea of the kids working together, because we'll be focusing on the All Might fight basically for the fight section. So I think people, when they see that Ida and Momo are going to go help, their brains kind of like shut off and they go, oh, of course, the kids are going to get involved. They say they're not going to fight, but like they're going to fight. And then like when they don't fight, they don't remember that. But like what I really love about this is that Ida and Momo keep their promise. Like this isn't some like shallow promise from the author where it's like, yeah, we have this big emotional scene. I'm going to protect you from fighting. And then they don't do it. No, in the scene, Deku's like, if I do something, I could save Bakugo, but I might get other people in danger. He's making the same mistakes he did back at the camp, and he's trying to like apply All Might logic to it, where he's like, but if I don't act, what kind of hero am I? And then Ida stops him, and he's like, no, you are not going. And Momo stops Kirishima, stops Kirishima. Ida's kind of in front of Shoto, so he can't move either. So like, they actually do what they set out to do. They do not fight. And they do, and they do not, and Ida and Momo do what they say they will do, which is that they're like, okay, in the same way that you guys couldn't stop me from wanting to go after Stain, instead of, keeping you away, you guys have told me, and you guys are talking to me, so I'm going to be there with you through your struggle, your emotional problems, and I'm going to make sure you stay safe. And he does that. And I think that's a great little thing for Ida that gets, and Momo, that gets lost in this, where I think people, again, they just think, oh yeah, they say they're not going to go, or they're not going to fight. They go, and like, I think they fought or something. They got Bakugo back. It's like, no, they really did accomplish this idea. And again, it's a moment where they're sitting there and they're like, we can't fight because of rules and what people think. And some person might think, who cares? Just let them go fight Mr. Compress. But I really love that scene, and I really love what that does for all these characters. So I just wanted to kind of conclude that, since there's not really much else to talk about when we get to that scene.
Yeah, no, but I totally agree. That's actually a great thing to bring up, because it sort of, again, feeds into that loop of logic that we talked about earlier, where it's like, they said they're going to do it, so they're going to do it, and it doesn't matter if it's going to be less raw, right? Because, I mean, yeah, sure, we could have gotten a scene of the entire group curb stomping Compress, because he deserves it. But it wouldn't have made sense with the promise that they made. And I think it is admirable that MHA holds itself to the promises it makes, and holds itself to the logic it establishes about character motivations and, character logic, so to speak. So, no, that's a great thing to bring up. I'm very glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, well, yeah, cool, exactly. Very, very cool. So yeah, I'm guessing we're just gonna skip over like their little scene with like you mentioned, the comedy where they're dressing up, which I think is a lot more fun in the anime, but it's still pretty cute in the manga too. But it is what it is. It's cute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really funny that the manga gives you like tags to remember who is who, as if their disguises were that good.
Well, and they keep doing it for Todoroki specifically. Like after the first one, it doesn't do it for everybody else, but anytime Todoroki talks, it says Todoroki. It's like.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can move on. I mean, we read the official English translation. I have no clue what the hell Ito is saying while he's trying to be a gangster.
Yeah, I think he's doing that like when you say like ixnay on the talk a, like that weird like thing they do in cartoons sometimes. But he was just like Igs Bay, big booby bay, like because in the anime they translate it as we're here to look for hot women, boy, like that kind of thing. So I think that's what it was going for. I don't know if that's a original thing or if that's the translation thing, because we've already talked like early MHA translation was a bit weird sometimes. But I think that's what it was going for.
Yeah, because he keeps saying IRL gay. And I was like...
Yeah, I think he's going IRL gay on the boob gay or whatever, like ixnay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, we could move on from that. So we get to like the scene with the press, right? And simultaneously the scene with Shigaraki, the Lee, and Bakugo. And that is honestly one of the smartest and coolest things in this arc to me, personally. I think that is so cool that they use the press conference as a distraction. It's such a simple way to like, preempt the villains reacting, but it's so cool once the dominoes start falling. And B, the moment Bakugo got taken, MHA had one mission, which is, okay, do we do a Sasuke or do we not? And it's really cool how that scene with Bakugo and Shigaraki just so utterly rejects the idea that this could be like, just Naruto again, that they would just take Bakugo and Bakugo would like go with them. And I especially love the way Bakugo rationalizes it. He's like, yeah, I like winning, but I like winning like All Might, not like you dweebs. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I also just love that one of Shigaraki's arguments that he hoped would turn Bakugo is like, we're looking to win, and you like winning, don't you, boy?
Yeah, and the anime really plays into it where like the music swells at that moment and then it zooms in on Bakugo's eye like, duh, like, oh, it clicked in his brain that evil boy, he's gonna do it. Like they really play into it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's just cool that they did it because it really feels like the manga was aware of the possible comparison and just avoided it in a way that feels very natural. Because Bakugo turning evil would have made like almost no sense here. It would have kind of been very shonen-y for the sake of it,
Yeah, well, I think what's fun about it, because I was talking to my friend who doesn't like MHA. He's gonna make a video about why MHA sucks. I'm like, yes, rake my favorites through the coals. But he's like, one of the things he didn't really like about Bakugo is he's like, why did they choose him again? And I'm like, well, one, they chose him because obviously they want to get at UA. And so, they wanted to choose someone to, like, make an example, basically, to make UA look bad. But two, the reason they chose Bakugo is, I don't know, bro, he just kind of has a bad vibe, dude. And he's like, and I like that because that's what the general audience thought at the time is like, Bakugo, he says kill, and he's like an asshole, so I think he's just evil. And like, that's how Shigaraki, the stupid idiot child, also thinks. And so, and so I think it's just a funny, like, connection to the audience of like Bakugo coming out and being like, what are you, stupid? I ain't doing that. Why would I ever do that? I'm not evil. I just like winning and I'm an asshole. Like I think it epitomizes it in the shot where he says, I like to win like All Might, which should be the moment where you go, oh, this person, he's really good all along, but he's framed like a villain. Like he has the scary eyes, the twitchy hand. Like that's the perfect symmetry of what I love about like MHA's art and storytelling is that shot right there of Bakugo being like, I am a hero, you evil villains.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, brilliant impression, my guy.
Oh yeah, I've been practicing my Bakugo for weeks for this moment.
Oh, great. But no, I totally agree, and I think it also loops back very well into what Aizawa says about him at the press conference, because he basically spells out what you just explained, right? Where he says, yeah, sure, he's aggressive and he's a bit of a piece of shit, but ultimately, he's doing all of this because he's so passionate about being a hero. And looking at him as just the kid that says fuck in the fan scans is very superficial and will be a mistake on the villain's part, as it ends up being. And also, to get back to Shigaraki, I do like how this scene evolves him, though. When like he gets blasted and the hand falls off his face, and his only reaction is, everyone calm down. Attacking him is not productive. And you just get this shot of Bakugo in terror. Because I think he can, it's like, the whole thing where All Might and All for One have like this aura of terror around them because they're so powerful. And this is like the first time we get a glimpse of it from Shigaraki. And I like that it's Bakugo who feels it. Like even his outline is like all fucked up. Well, and it's because he's like shuddering.
Well, and and what causes the terror is how like calm he is, which Bakugo didn't really. I mean, I guess Bakugo saw him at USJ, so it would also like affect him because he would remember this guy being the dude who like whenever they caught Kirigiri, he's like, yeah.
He just goes feral.
Yeah. So that would probably freak him out. Real quick gag that I really love, and I think it actually like humanizes Dabi really well, is the moment where Shigaraki's like, untie the explodey boy. I'm sure he won't do anything. And Dabi's like, bro, I am sure he's going to do something. And he's like, do it anyway. And then Dabi goes, twice you do it. Which is like that. Which is like actually like a very human thing of like, no, I'm actually scared of this kid. I don't want to be hit. Please don't. Please don't make me do that.
Yeah, no. And then also, like, what's also really cool is when he's like, oh, yeah, twice do it. Twice is like, no way. Next panel, he's doing it.
Like, I'm so mad the anime did not catch that, like, comedic timing of, like, no way. and then he's doing it. Like he just goes like, yes, no way, walks very slowly, goes and does. I'm like, guys, that was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah. Well, actually, the anime misses out on another one, which is when a little later when the heroes come in, and All Might's like, "Oh, Bakugo, good job holding it down." And in the anime, Bakugo immediately starts yelling at him. But here you get this one panel where Bakugo looks like he's about to cry, like he has like the uneven mouth and like the sort of squinted eyes. And the next panel, he starts screaming at All Might like, "Oh, I was fine all along." Yeah, I really like that because it kind of humanizes him. And in the anime, it's just like him just yelling.
Yeah, I think they have the shot, but it's more like the it's like so quick, and like again with manga you can linger on these things because I think it's there, but I could be wrong. But with and then another thing I think is funny that they changed in the anime is that, so in the manga they have the TV in the background, but obviously Hori isn't gonna like draw the people on it, but I think he draws like the light coming from it. But then in like the anime or whatever, the TV is like off for like most of the press conference when they're first talking to Bakugo, and then whenever they like turn it off or whatever afterwards, I'm like, it was off. You didn't see any of that. What are you talking about? And then finally, I think it's funny that they give Mr. Compress's speech to Shigaraki, because in the manga, whenever they have like, we're all here for different reasons, some for society, some for this, the word bubbles are not Shigaraki's, they're still circular and normal, and it leads out from Mr. Compress's conversation. But I think this was a good choice in the anime, which is that they have Mr. Compress finish, and then Shigaraki is the one to be like, we're all here for different reasons, bloobity blue. That way it leads up to him getting hit, where he's like, I'm sure you're the same. So that was a smart change on their part.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I can be nice to the anime.
Yes, we can be. I'm going to be very nice to the English dub specifically in a bit. But we'll put a pin on that for now. But so then they get a knock from Kamino Pizza, which, God, I love that so much. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's very stupid, and I love that, like, I'm thinking of this, like, strategically. Why did it happen? And it's either one, Edshot is just like a cheeky bastard, or two, they sat in a room and they thought, so then you'll knock on the door, and then they'll turn to the door, which will distract them long enough for All Might to bust down a wall. It's all perfect. It's a perfect distraction. We need it. We have to have it done. How otherwise they'll block All Might.
But I mean, jokes aside, that is a really cool scene.
Oh no,
with everyone
it's wonderful.
Coming in. Yeah. And I've talked about this on videos, on streams, on everything. I love how this scene, without you even noticing, does work for Dobby's dance. It's so funny how, like, you completely in the background, you just watch this scene and it doesn't click until you ask, wait, why would the author specifically, A, reveal everyone's name here except Dobby's, and B, not let Endeavor meet him?
Well, and C, as soon as Dobby goes, I'm gonna do something, guys, they knock him specifically out first.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He can't talk or like make blue flames.
Yes. So it's really funny to think about that, you know, this was for a long time a core piece of quote unquote evidence for Dobby, you know, being who he is. And I just find it also so funny that Endeavor comments on it as well, where he's like, why am I the only one out here?
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the I also love another example of like doing the most boring thing ever, but that's why I like it, is that they're like, we found out your secret base and all your names because we worked really hard at the police station. High five, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, like, every single one of them does have a criminal record, so it does make sense,
yeah, exactly. But I just love the idea of, like, how do they find their secret base? Well, a few weeks ago, they were just, like, doing their job, and they researched, and they were like, hey, this guy sounds like that guy. That's probably where their base is. Heck yeah, guys. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like, again, normally you would want to make that really crazy, like how they find out, like some super, like you would make it like the kids are responsible for like finding him because they have the tracker, right? And so that would lead to the base. But no, that just leads to the Nomus. Their secret base they find just by doing police work.
yeah, which is really cool.
Which I really like. It makes Sukauchi seem like actually useful.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a cool thing about the Kamino arc is that it isn't just the big boys that are useful. You get the police, you got the press, like everyone's involved. It's a big event, and therefore everyone is sort of, yeah, involved. Like everyone has something to do or something to contribute, no matter how small it may be. But then, of course, I think around this time we also switch over to the kids finding the factory.
Yes. Yep.
Which is also, can I just say again, Kirishima not being subtle at all? Like, oh yeah, I just bought this highly advanced military gadget for 50,000 yen for my friend because I need to save him platonically. Like, all right, my man.
You do you.
Yeah. Why are you, as a man, spending 50,000 yen on another man, huh? Explain that. There is no straight explanation for that.
These are special circumstances, okay?
Yes, of course.
I know well, I think the thing that just, like, especially if you're an anime fan, the thing that just, like, overdoes sell it is that, or completely sells it, like, there's no doubt in your mind, is in the first movie where he's like, don't worry, Bakugo, I know you didn't pack an outfit, but I packed it for you and have all your measurements, so let's get naked and change!
That, and also the fact that they share a bed.
Yeah, and isn't it like isn't the room, like, decked out in, like, a way that
Yes.
feels romantic?
Yes, it's a romance room. And also, don't forget that when he's holding Bakugo back, he's not, like, holding him by his hand or whatever. He puts his hand gently on his chest and says, "No, Bakugo." Like,
down, boy. My boy.
Yeah, they really went hard on it in that movie. I was feasting.
Real quick, since I'm never going to talk about this movie again because I hate it, the one scene that always blows my mind that these people clearly, for some reason, didn't watch the show is that this takes place after season 2, and there's a scene where they're, like, trying to use Uraraka's thing to float up, and then Todoroki shows up and uses his flames to make the heat rise or whatever to help them. And Deku goes, "Todoroki, you're using your flames?" I'm like, what are you talking about, you stupid child? This after the Stain arc.
Yeah, well, I mean, the movies do have a tendency of just writing their dialogue by picking random dialogue from the manga and just distributing it every 5 minutes. That's kind of how the movie gets written. But anyway,
Yes,
we're talking about something good
Let's
here.
talk about good. To put a cap on their jump, like where they jump in and fight everybody. Again, I really like this. That Shigaraki, because he is the loser villain, he had this big plan, and I just love the sequence of events of we found where you were at like 2 days later, and then we break in, completely incapacitate you immediately in like one spread, and then your one guy who could have done anything, we knock him out instantly, and then Shigaraki's like, well, guess what? I have no moves. And then they break that, and they're like, yeah, we know where that is. We caught them all. And he's like, Kurogiri, do something. And then they knock out Kurogiri, and they're like, yeah, we took out Kurogiri. And then, like, I just love how anticlimactic it is. Like, that's what makes it so good for, again, the student aspect of this is that Shigaraki had this big crazy raid on a camp to get one kid. The one kid he chose because he had bad vibes, doesn't want to work with him now, and now he's gotten everybody in trouble for doing that, when, again, this kid's not going to work with us, so that was a waste of time. And then, all of the things he had planned, they're just like, dude, we just stayed up real late and just, like, figured it out. Like, I don't know what your plan was.
Yeah, it literally does feel like a man-child or a literal child trying to play chess against a group of adults. It does really sell you on the fact that Shigaraki is really just an incompetent kid. Mentally stunted.
Yeah, which is why, lead in. Which is why the arc, what makes it so cool and why it takes such a great turn is when All for One comes out and he's like, well, I don't want the plot to end now. So, you know what? Final boss. And everyone's like, oh no, I don't know why. Wait. And his entrance, the anime, I don't know how it could have sold it better than the manga, because the manga's way of doing it is probably, like, it's still one of the best moments in the whole manga is they're like, we need to get him, and then it's just a tiny little black box at the bottom of the screen, like a blink, and then you turn the page, and there's no explosion, there's no sound effects, it's just the spread.
Just carnage.
Yeah, it's just carnage. And I'm like, it's so perfect, like, I like how they do it in the anime with the music building up and the big explosion, and then after the cut, after the credits, you have that big scary scene. That's a great scene. But I really think the simpleness of, hey, you stop right, black screen, turn the page, done. It's so good.
It is. I mean, just also the imagery for All for One, because we've only seen like glimpses of him so far. Like we have seen like his disfigured face and everything. But the fact that he just shows up as a man in a suit and then they detain him and then the moment happens that you just described. And in that spread, he's just floating, but limp, like with his arms hanging, is such a eerie image, such eerie imagery for what has so far been a fairly, visually lighthearted comic, right? Like you have the Nomu, of course, which are fairly brutal looking, but aside from that, you never got like a man floating in midair like a corpse.
Well, and then right after that, all the kids are like, so then we all died internally, and it shows them all bloodied on the floor dead. Like, that's what they felt, and it shows you. And it's like, oh no, this is not good. You can hear the opera music before season 3 even put it there. We're all dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, also then the final page where it's like you see his mask, but his like outline is all fucked up, right? Like it looks almost inked.
Yeah, it's like, he has like this so darkness aura that's kind of around. Like it's almost as if like in the same way like Deku's flesh will like come off his bones. It's like whenever they show like the gruesomeness of that, it's almost as if like his aura is like ripping off his body. Like It's really good.
It's excellent, yeah. And and then they warp, or our evil boys warp up to the evilest boy, while our good boys are scared shitless. And I want to say I do really appreciate what we get like on the kids, as in on like our group of UA students, and how they feel about All for One's mere presence. Like the fact that they are so terrified just because he's there really, really sells this first appearance of his. And I also like, as you mentioned earlier, that Ida still manages to hold Deku back. Like I think it does really put weight behind Ida's words. Because, they're all scared shitless. They're paralyzed in fear, and he still holds his promise.
Yeah, and it's framed again as like Deku's gonna do a hero moment of like, I'm scared, but that was an excuse last time, so now I'm gonna avenge myself. I'm gonna make up for being a pathetic loser who couldn't save Bakugo because my arm. And he's just like, are you a stupid loser? Do you want me to kill you? Stay put.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so cool. And then we get, Bakugo and the League appear.
And through vomit warping, which is still a really great idea. I love that.
Yes, that's so funny. But also, I want to say, and we're going to talk about this maybe later, but I am really fond of this very first moment when All for One says, you failed once again, Tomura. Because that sets up an expectation in your mind, right? It sets up, okay, this is like the Emperor and Darth Vader or whatever. He's going to be punished now because, he's the evil overlord. He doesn't accept failure. But no, immediately after he goes, but that's okay. Fail as many times as you want because this is all for you. And I always thought that this was such a wonderful, wonderful way of subverting yet another typical shonenism. Right? First, we had the whole Sasuke thing with Bakugo, and now we have, again, this, oh, you failed me for the last time subordinate cliche. And I really, really appreciate that. And it's really great how the series never did anything with All for One again that could have ruined this moment.
Yeah, no, it's really great that you have that moment where he's like, I even brought this kid who like has clearly stated his motivations to never want to help you. But since you find value in it, my son, I brought him here so that you could do it, bro. Like I support you to the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing, and it's a good thing that nothing ever happened with that could have sent that awry. Cause All Might is here to put All for One back in prison. Let's go.
Yes. I will say, the speech bubble, I will smash you into prison, did make me roll my eyes. Cause like, come on, man, just kill him. Like let's not play Saturday morning cartoon here, right? This man has canonically terrorized the world for almost a century. Just shoot him at this point, right?
But to be fair, these are the most Saturday morning cartoon characters in the stories.
That is also true. That is also very true.
And also, just before this, so I don't forget to mention it, because again, the anime kind of rushes through it and makes you forget. The Oklahoma Smash is so cool. I love the shot because he gets he gets 3 Nomus on him, and then he jumps in the air, and the speech bubble, like the little line that would lead to the bubble, is swirling like a tornado, and he goes Oklahoma, and it's just a silent panel of him in the air like it's in slow-mo, and then they go flying through the building. I love it. So cool.
Actually, since we're there, I also want to say what I really appreciated was banter, or at least interaction, between a full-powered All Might and Endeavor, because we almost never get that. We definitely don't get it anymore. It was cool sort of to see the dynamic they have, where All Might is sort of very sincere and Endeavor is very snappy and sarcastic, but All Might sort of knows how to deal with it.
Yeah, no, I love the line of like, do you need glasses in your old age? Which I also like, because it's a very subtle thing. I don't know if maybe this was just the translator kind of making it more silly, but it's a subtle thing of like Endeavor recognizing that All Might is in a older state, like he's an older guy, but he still respects him for being so powerful, which is going to kind of be like contrasted when he sees, oh no, he's really like deteriorating. What is this? Be strong, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, so now everyone's there, like All Might's fighting All for One, and it's time for Deku to formulate his big plan. And wow, I forgot how little there is to this in the manga, because in the anime this is like a huge scene, and here it's all like cramped within like 2-3 pages. I did not remember how narrow it feels, mostly because like the half of the plan happens on one page with like very tight panels. Because obviously in my head, I have the scene from the anime in mind where like, and Todoroki will make an ice ramp.
Yeah,
and then you see Todoroki like build a huge ramp.
And the music's building and...
Yeah. Yeah, and in the manga, the ice part is literally a tiny panel in the corner, which kind of took me off guard. Like I didn't realize that there was this much of a discrepancy, or I didn't remember at least.
Yeah, but I think what works about it is that the part they do hang on is when they're in the air. Like they put a lot of time into like Mount Lady doing something, the villain's trying to do something, the actual obtaining of Bakugo is the focal point, and I think they linger on that long enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, again, because I have Nakamura's scene in my head, you know, where Bakugo is like
where he flies past like 10 buildings, and then whenever we don't let Nakamura animate it, we're back to where we're supposed to be.
yeah, but that scene is great. I love it.
Yeah, it's rawness and swag. It's rule of cool, and I'll accept it.
Yeah, and I will say I always appreciate one thing Nakamura did in this scene, which is when Shigaraki reaches out to Bakugo. He looks so twisted.
Yeah, he's
like
very
his anatomy
elongated.
is all fucked up. Yeah, he's all fucked up, and he's like almost like spiraling around Bakugo to grab him. Like that's really cool, and I was very surprised to see that had no equivalent in the manga. Like he just sort of reaches for him.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another like little scene where it's like, yeah, the anime definitely improved. Because yeah, I definitely think it's better there, and like the music's kicking in, and like it really makes it feel hype. And but yeah, I mean, because in the manga it's more of just like a character moment, whereas like in the anime it's a spectacle and a character moment, which I mean that's what you always want if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, Kirishima being anything but homosexual, of course.
Yeah, it's really weird how people tried to deny it whenever, as soon as he reached out his hand, he said, "I love you," and then Bakugo, like, they had the little panel of him whispering under his breath, "I love you too." And then, like, I don't know why people try to deny it at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that totally happened.
Well, it wasn't in the anime, to be fair. So
yeah, that's true. The anime did cut that out.
Well, and like, I mean, you only remember the anime anyway, so that's probably why.
Yeah, I mean, the anime also cut out Giren's Black Market arc. That was pretty shitty.
That was pretty crappy. But yeah. Anyway,
we're actually just turning into the misinformation merchants here.
It's gonna be great when like someone like there's gonna be like one fan of yours who's so dedicated to like you, and they're just like, I only read MHA when IanWaffles and Ocean Man talk about it. So They're gonna be like, I don't understand. What's happening?
Yeah, yeah. Like, but okay, so back to the actual plot. We have the kids are out of the way, so now the fight can start proper. And honestly, this fight is mostly rawness and swag for most of it, but it's cool how it like progresses into a character moment. Where at first it's like just All Might and All for One fighting, and then All Might starts failing, and then All for One starts peeling away the layers of his hero persona bit by bit. And then, of course, you get, the reveal of his skeleton form to the world, which is a very dramatic moment. And, of course, the biggest moment of the whole arc, which is when All for One is like, now that they see how skinny you are, no one will see you as a hero anymore. And then the people still do. The people still stand by him. Like, that's maybe, like, if you just want a single moment as peak MHA, that is probably it. That is so emblematic of what makes the series good. This, like, willingness to do, like, the typical hero-villain stuff, but then be super sincere and optimistic about it, even in the face of overwhelming evil.
Yeah, because that's the. Oh, I'm sorry. You can finish.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's also cool because it doesn't, like, feel overly saccharine, right? It just feels like, yeah, these people have trusted this man for, God, 20 years, 25 years. Why would they stop now?
Yeah, why? Like, if there's anyone in their society who seems superficial but is the most genuine, it's All Might. And so what is so great is that you have this idea of like that's the beautiful, like, just character of All Might is this idea of, like, he looks like he's literally designed to, like, look at like he's ripped out of a comic book. He acts in this very over the top way that I feel like to a lot of people could come across as insincere, like he's mocking you almost, like he laughs in the face of danger and in the crisis. But what makes him so great is that everybody 100% believes him because he is so sincere, he is so kind, he is so loving. And so you have this moment where the manga is trying to trick you. It's trying to have these scenes of, like, when they do the interview, they're like, those people are going to get those kids killed, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you feel they're like, the vibe was changing around heroes and stuff like that. And then you have the scene of everyone looking at Kamino when it's first destroyed, and they don't see All Might immediately. They just see, like, the destruction. And so they're like, yeah, I think the heroes are slacking, or blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, they're not trying as hard as they would anymore. And they're like, is All Might going to be okay? But nobody ever says anything bad about All Might in that section. But it builds up to this idea of, like, oh no, the people are turning. But it's like, it's this one moment of sincerity where it's like, even if the people, you could, be against them in the way that, like, they feel coddled or whatever, and they feel entitled. And even if you could look at All Might and maybe see, like, this is just a big show, he's hiding the secret from them. Everybody in the story agrees that All Might is their guy, and that they believe in him. And so even in this moment where they have maybe not completely lost hope, but, in this moment of crisis, this kid's been taken, you're unsure, All Might, they never waver. And I think what makes it so special and what makes it always makes me like I cried while reading it. I was like, yes, thank you. It can still do it. Because I haven't read this arc in like a year. But it was the moment where everyone's just like, even if he looks different, he's still All Might, and they're saying all these things. And there's no, like, crazy looking panel in that little section. It's just everyone just kind of, like, saying a bunch of stuff and looking nervous, but being like, no, he'll win. And, like, the Deku Bakugo is kind of supposed to be the crescendo, but the part that gets me to cry is just all the normal people being like, well, that doesn't matter. Who cares? He's gonna save us,
Yeah,
and it's so good, and they peek on it more later, where they have the shot of it's when Gran Torino's kind of giving the big speech, explaining this to the audience, and you have All Might as this tiny form at the bottom of the page, and then surrounding him is all the people crying out to him, which is again another wonderful shot. But I think the big thing that makes me love this fight is that, and you don't really think about it, is that All Might can't hear these people. The only person he can hear, and this is after his soul has been crushed, and that's why these people are cheering him on, he can't hear any of these people. The only person he can hear is the one woman trapped behind the building. And that one woman's voice is enough for him to go, no, I still have enough juice to protect this one person and to take you down, because you're right, All for One. There are so many things people need to protect in this world. And it's not these other people who are calling out for him. It's this one woman who needs him right now. And that is beautiful, and it also ties back to the muscular fight, which is why, because this fight is a parallel to that, where you have All Might protecting the one or giving up and having this moment where his spirit breaks, just like Deku when he's under muscular, and then his heart is restored whenever he hears the cry of one person saying they need him because he's a hero. And then it's the same as the muscular fight where he breaks his arm multiple times and uses it in clever ways and just overpowers the villain, who is basically one big muscle, one big punch, and he uses a broken arm to defeat him through a clever strategy. Deku uses the Delaware Detroit Smash, and All Might puts his back into it a little more and does like a little feint. It's great. Peak fiction. Mwah! MHA, I love you.
United States of Smash, it is.
Yes, indeed.
Also, this is where I want to quickly praise something that I have not seen anyone talk about. So in this scene also, we get the beginnings of Endeavor's arc. You know, when he shows up on the scene and he sees All Might all frail and broken, and you get like the first glimpses of the fact that he's aware of just how badly he's fucked up his life. And in the official English manga, he says, explain this frail, weak body. But do you remember what he says in the English dub of the anime?
Stand up and show them why you're better!
Exactly.
I just read that over it instead. I was not content with the manga's version.
Yeah, because that is so much better. It's so it in one single scream just completely turns Endeavor around, right? It completely redefines who he is, because up until this point, we had no reason to believe that Endeavor was at all interested at introspection. He was just a one-note evil guy. But that line, followed by like the preceding flashback of like his family and all of that, that one line, show them why you're better, implies so much about what Endeavor feels about himself, his family, and his relationship to All Might, that it's almost too much to take in at once, which is why it takes so long for the plot to then properly come into focus. But I've always really loved that, and it's something I never see people talk about when bringing up Kamino.
It's amazing. It's also really good just simply because Endeavor, him saying this is like the first time he's basically what it also implies with like the flashback of him hurting his family and him being like, because of this, it tells you that he has a self-awareness that he's hurt his family, and that in his head it was all like, not just like it was all worth it subconsciously, right? Like he was willing to throw away his family for this dream, and so you could imply, well, then he thinks this dream is worth his family. But it implies an extra layer, because if he's self-aware of it enough to like think about it and process it, that means that he made this decision, and that to him something about achieving All Might was somehow worth ruining his family, even if it led to this point, which will become elaborated on with his character, which is that it's this kind of like self-hatred cycle of like what happened to Toya, but then also like he had already committed to it, and all these things have already happened. So it's like, if I give up on it, then what was the point of doing it, of hurting my family? I had to commit to this, and you're telling me that this is what I was working towards? No.
Yeah, and it's man, Endeavor really, I do think, like, as time has gone on, Endeavor might be my favorite single thing Horikoshi has written. If we want to just isolate one aspect of MHA, I feel like just the ways that story has come and the way it has been told is just so far above certain other elements in the story, it's not even funny. It sometimes genuinely feels like it's being written by someone else. Especially, you know, towards the later parts of MHA, but we'll get to that when the time is right.
Yeah. But I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great moment. So what's next? What's next on the docket in this fight?
Well, so they fight, and All Might wins with a feint, which is kind of significant because All Might up to this point is just the simplest hero imaginable. He just do the big punchy. And I mean, both All For One and Gran Torino comment on it. They say, "Oh, that's weird. What? That's not how we work. We're straightforward Saturday morning villains and heroes. You're supposed to punch me, and I'm supposed to say, ah, you fool." And I think that's also a great moment because it sort of reestablishes this idea of passing the torch, and passing the torch onto a generation where pure strength isn't enough, where you have to be clever, you have to pool your strength in different ways.
Well, he also learned it from watching Deku, so it's another example of him taking on what his student has imparted onto him. And what I think is really great, it's another kind of little microcosm of like All Might's willingness to live, is that I think the moment he decided that he was going to live through this fight and not just win the fight was when All For One said, like, and you failed as a teacher too. And then you see like a little thing in All Might where he thinks about it for a second. He's like, yeah, you're right. That's why I have to win. I have to like beat you and survive so that I can live to raise him right. Which is great. That's another great moment, which will tie into something we'll talk about later in the teacher conference scene. But for now, it's being established, and I really, really like it because that's kind of that's another part of the heart of All Might, is that he's this godlike hero who has just been so humbled and touched by this stupid, quirkless young boy he's completely incompetent basically at using this power, but just his spirit and his heart and his sincerity and his just how much good he's given to All Might as a person, and like giving him a strength or a new lease on life has strengthened him, and he doesn't want to let that stupid kid down, which is great.
Speaking of letting kids down, one thing I do want to mention here, which I've always loved, is when All For One reveals that Shigaraki is Nana's grandson. I adore that his only reasoning to convince All Might is, come on, man, I would totally do it.
That's probably one of like All For One's best lines in the whole story, is like, because again, and it completely solidifies himself as like an evil cartoon man, where he's just like, come on, bro, like if this were one of our episodes, wouldn't I do something? If this was the finale, right? If this were the finale, I'd do something like that. And then he does the little thing where he's like, ooh, it looks like I stole your smile, and he does the little cheek thing where he tries to raise it up, even though he doesn't. He's a stupid potato man. I also love they don't translate this into the anime, and it's kind of hard to notice anyway if you're just reading speech bubbles. But I love that I wish they had translated it, because in the manga, every time he speaks, it says wheeze wheeze behind him. So he's like, you stupid idiot! You should have known I would have done that.
Yeah, because obviously in the anime they gave him like a very typically menacing deep voice,
and it was probably worth it. But I just think that's a funny extra layer of like during like this really is two old men smack talking each other. And he's like, "You stupid idiot! I did it, and I'm proud."
I'll give up over my dead body. I can wait those 5 minutes.
And he goes, I dream about you sometimes, and it's really freaky. And the nurse comes in, and he says, All For One, what are you doing? I said I had the dream.
Although I will say that's also a really cool line.
Yeah, I love that line.
He's like,
yeah.
In a way, it almost kind of humanizes All For One as well. Where it's like,
really does.
Yeah, no, I mean, I am evil cartoon man, but I also have nightmares of you, All Might.
And I don't like him either. Like he does. I like that he doesn't have an evil spin on it. Like he's not like, I will become the nightmare. He's literally like, I'm gonna float like 10 yards back, and I'm just gonna kind of pew 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 you from up here. And then when I think you're good, then I will punch you because I'm kind of afraid.
Yeah, in general, I wish we'd seen more of their dynamic overall in a way, because it is kind of very enjoyable. Also, right at the start when they smack talk, and All Might's like, you're not looking too good yourself. What's with that breathing mask?
It's so great. I think it's one of those, it leaves you wanting more in a good way. Like I'm glad we don't see more of it. I think if we had got like a flashback, maybe that would be fun. But even then, I also don't think this was their dynamic at all. Like, I think this is a new thing because they are both old and aging, I think their actual dynamic is what kind of Gran Torino talks about, of like, he says evil things and that gets under All Might's skin and then All Might brutalizes him. Like, I think that's their dynamic. And this is their dynamic now because they both recognize, like, oh, that took you like 30 seconds, you slowpoke. Oh, yeah? Well, you have a breathing apparatus, you stupid idiot. And he's like, well, you have a cane, All Might. He's like, yeah, well, you have a stutter. like they're in this position of like, oh god, I'm gonna die this fight, huh? Well, I better at least make him think he's going to too.
Yeah.
So I think it really works as a culmination of what their characters probably once were. The pettiness, I think, is new for both of them.
Yeah, I can see that.
But last thing I'll say about that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about that is I think one unsung hero, and I really like how she's portrayed, is Nana. And I know some people have said, like, I don't know if they feel this way anymore because we've gotten more of her, but some people say, like, well, why didn't we ever, like, get more of this? Like, doesn't this kind of feel like they're trying to make us care about this character and we don't know anything about her? And I always say, like, I disagree because what they do so well is they cover her face. So this idea is, like, she's not meant to be someone that we connect with as, like, a character. She is meant to be something that is intrinsically tied to All Might and whose value comes simply from all the things she taught him about the smile, about all these different things. So to me, it would kind of take away from her if we got, like a better look at her and her, like, talking to All Might. Because the point is that it's strictly All Might. It's all All Might focused. And so her being this kind of ephemeral or ethereal being from his past, who he never even told Deku about, like he never even talked to him about, and that to me that sells her importance and like the love All Might has for her even more. That like to him, the only way we ever learn about this character is in like brief moments where he's like, yeah, I had a master, and then like all these things that she taught him, he's completely taken into himself and thinking about, but we don't get to fully see even All Might's flashbacks of her. She's that sacred to him.
Yeah,
and I think it's really good. I think she adds a lot to the story or to the story of this fight, and I really like her presence as someone that we don't get to really see much.
Yeah, and I think that sort of sancticity to her, like this, how much the series tries to like keep her out of reach, kind of characterizes her in turn as well, or at least characterizes her through the eyes of All Might, as you said. And I think that that's very effective, especially here. She's like this figure not to be sullied by All for One's evil mouth. And that obviously does work as much as it has to for this arc, I would say. Like, I don't think we needed to have like a full breakdown of a character right now.
No, absolutely not.
I will say I've always been sad we never got to see her fight against All for One, especially because like the All Might Rising special chapter, you know, like teases it, but it doesn't show us anything.
Yeah, and
I've always thought it was kind of sad.
Well, and I think it would have hit really well because you could have had the idea of like maybe if you wanted one flashback from All for One's perspective, you could have when he says like, "Oh, she died so pitifully," you could have him like say maybe. Or, like, when he says that, you could show, like, a shot of her, like, broken and defeated and looking, like, pitiful. And then All Might obviously remembers her looking better, like, looking, like, really standing tall and all these things. And then when we maybe meet Nana later, or maybe when All for One returns, maybe he sees something in a different character that reminds him of the Nana encounter. And it's that when he was talking to All Might, he was framing it in a very, like, obviously, like, you know, trying to make him feel bad. But it's like, oh, this reminds me of my final stand with Nana Shimura. And we actually see that, no, like, she went down as a hero. And that could have been, like, a cool, you know, full circle thing. Obviously, that's definitely one of those suggestions of, like, hindsight's 2020. So I'm not going to, like, hold the story to it. That's just something that could have been cool, and the anime maybe could have, you know, done something with.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen / read All Might Rising?
Yeah, no, I've seen that.
Yeah, because one thing that also has always made me a little sad about it is that fight looks actually like more interesting than this fight here in Kamino in terms of like All for One specifically. Because I don't know if you remember, but there's like buildings turning into fleshy tentacles and shit.
Yeah, no, I remember.
The
first thing when you said that, like it being more interesting, I'm like, wasn't there like tentacles or something?
Yeah, exactly. Like it was freaky. And there's one criticism about this fight that I have always agreed with a little, which is the fact that for someone who has a billion quirks, All for One fights really boringly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
go ahead.
Just air pressure, right?
Oh, sorry. What'd you say?
I said just air pressure and like punches, basically.
Yeah, and again, I think for me, that's absolutely fine, because again, it's just two old men hitting each other. Obviously from a but I will say, I think you can argue for this one of like, there's no like logical reason he can't just have more creative quirks, you know? So you could argue like, yeah, just make it more raw and Kino. But to me, I think the brutality of it, of just like, I'm gonna like knock you through 50 buildings that there were probably a lot of people in. I'm just going to make a giant punch and punch you really hard, punchy man. Ha, how will that make you feel? I'm just gonna kind of like float around and do like little shockwaves. To me, I like it. It feels like a decrepit state of a god, of like they could do the bare minimum of push you really hard, punch you really hard, my aura, baby. So it's never,
yeah.
and again, I think it's one of those things where when I'm reading it, I don't really feel that. It's just more like afterwards, it's like, I guess we could have got some Sakuga moments, I guess, if that puts it in a way.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think it's really a big deal, especially because All Might's side of the fight is so good. United States of Smash is still a singular attack moment that the series has not really lived up to, besides Prominence Burn, in my opinion. So they're still trying to like emulate it, and they're not managing so far.
Yeah, well, and again, I think that's also because like maybe if they did have more of like a kind of a crazy back and forth, it might not, like, that might also take away from it, where it's like, look at this crazy clever move, where it's just like, no,
oh yeah, of course.
The cleverness of All Might is that he does one dodge and then punches really hard, and you're like, oh my gosh, All Might's a genius.
That's also true. That's also a very good point.
But yeah.
But okay, so do we want to move on from the fight, or do you have anything else?
No,
to say?
I think that's it. I just want to say that, in these uncertain MHA times, I was very, very happy that I could still read this fight and cry for All Might and cheer him on, and that the moment where he stands tall and he puts his fist up, and just the way it's drawn, like, obviously it kind of goes without saying, Horikoshi's an amazing artist. All the punches, all the screaming, all the veins popping, all the flesh spewing and all that stuff. It looks so good. Mm-hmm. And like I think if you've just watched the anime, while I think you could enjoy it more for especially like seasons 1 through 3, I think you're doing a disservice to not at least experience the fight in the manga. Because like even just the shot of like All Might getting thrown through like buildings, and they have this kind of wide shot of all these buildings that are being destroyed, you really feel the destruction. And I just think that that's a big part of the spectacle for me. And again, another reason like the actual moment to moments don't matter is because when you get your grab Gran Torino and then Detroit smash a wind cannon, it looks incredible.
Absolutely, but
I would call it a Horikoshi can brute force his way through choreography. It's weird. It's like he can just make it look so good that you like forget that like not much is happening.
Oh yeah, I mean the two spreads for the United States of Smash are phenomenal. But I don't actually know if you know this, but there is a double spread that was lost in the volume release that existed only in the weekly release and Weekly Shonen Jump.
I know there were some pages that were changed, but I didn't know there was a spread. So yeah.
There was a spread of All Might charging up his arm as a silhouette and only his eye glowing. And it's a super cool image. It's super difficult to find now. And it was just removed from the volume release for whatever reason.
Well, I hope you'll put it on screen.
Probably for page flow.
Yeah. I hope you'll put it on screen then.
I'll see if I can find it. I remember I found it on like a specialized like volume comparison like blog post years ago. And it's always stuck with me as like the weirdest volume alteration. I don't even know if it's listed on the MHA wiki, to be honest.
Crazy.
But I'll go look for it, and maybe I'll put it on screen now. And otherwise, you'll have to take my word for it. Call me a liar in the comments, please.
That it was dope and Kino and raw and swag.
Yes. I mean, this arc was always Kino and dope and raw and swag, so
yeah, and
that wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah, and I think one final thing for the fight is that I think that that's because I didn't put my back into it is one of the coolest lines that I've ever heard from any superhero. Because it really works for All Might, the fact that he's an old man, like that's the idea. And so it's like, oh, your attack wasn't good enough. It's like, yeah, but now that my joints are back in place, let's do this, baby. Like it very, like I like how simple it is. Like it's not something like, well, I'm gonna try harder, or like, that was a setup for my this attack. Like, haha, you're now in the position. He's like, no, I just need to put my back into it. Sorry, I'm a little rusty here, all for one. Let's do this. It's so good. It's so amazing. And the both the anime and the manga really sell that imagery.
Absolutely. And speaking of other moments that were really sold in both versions, now it's your turn. One of, I think, the most memorable moments in the series to me, especially in the manga, because, you get Deku's version of it and Shigaraki's version in the same chapter.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just love that. It's again one of those things where like MHA does something really simple, but it's actually kind of clever. Where like All Might cannot freely speak about it publicly, so he just points to the TV screen and says, "Now it's your turn," and just hopes that Deku gets it, and Deku does. It's just so cool. I love it.
And I do prefer You're Next, because the way like they explain the civilians taking it is like he's saying, "Come at me," to the villains, like but then to Deku obviously it's "You're next" as in you're the successor, whereas the manga changes it to "Now it's your turn," and they're like, yeah, that's a threat to the villains. I'm like, is it though?
I don't know. Now it's your turn. Kind of, you could still take that as a threat, I think.
I guess if I'm thinking of how the anime does it, where he goes, "Now it's your turn," it doesn't sound like menacing. It just kind of sounds like yeah, like he's talking to me, the audience. Like I need to step up. So I guess you could take it if you interpret like how he says it a little differently. I just always hear the anime in my head, and I'm like, how would anybody? Not that they would take it as like I have a specific person in mind, but I feel like I would take it as he's saying like, my time is done. Now it's your turn to step up, audience. And I'd be like, whoa, he's talking to me. Oh my. I will pay my taxes this year. Okay.
You think there was like a wave of newly invigorated like wannabe heroes after that?
That or just like a bunch of people decided to work at the soup kitchen that week.
Yes. Because all the gyms were absolutely
the
bursting
gyms were
that week. January 1st.
They were just like, and it's like the All Might flex routine where it's like, if All Might can look this good while still being a decrepit old man, what's your excuse? He's just flexing.
They're all trying to unlock the muscle form.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm so happy both the anime and the manga never try to explain that.
Thank goodness, because it very much is an early manga. I'm inspired kind of by One Piece's wackiness as like reason, because it makes no sense.
Yeah. Like, when I flex, I don't have smoke coming off of me, usually.
Well, and like sometimes people can see the smoke, and sometimes it's like used as a smoke screen to like hide part of him. And then he's got like the half form, and then he's got the part of again just the idea of like he says like, oh, it's like a kid at the pool where they suck in their gut. I'm like, I'm sorry though, you're a skeleton man. How does sucking in your gut give you muscles?
How do you get a full head taller?
Yeah, it makes no sense. It's the same thing with his eyes, and that's fine. It doesn't. And I think the reason it works so well is that they establish immediately a fourth wall breaking thing of like, he's even drawn differently from us. So like your brain immediately like kind of fills in the blanks of like, this is just supposed to be cartoony to explain how cool All Might is.
Yeah, absolutely. But okay, so then we move on to the aftermath of the arc, which I think is really cool as well. Just sort of the impact that Kamino has. It's easily the largest paradigm shift so far, and one of the largest in the entire series. And I like how immediately, like within one chapter, we start asking the heavy-hitting questions, like, what now? Like, sure, we won, but at what cost? All Might is gone. Like, he cannot work anymore. He's retiring. And I think that that's, again, one of those things where it's like the series doesn't linger on saccharine promises of, oh, we'll pull through at all. It immediately goes for the logical question, like, okay, what do we do now? How does the world move on from this? And I've always really appreciated that. Yeah,
I really like that. I like the little detail of, like, there's like, riots in America because they're like, All Might's too badass to lose. They're like, they say like, America, the homeland of heroes, we're in shambles at All Might's retirement. And I just think that's a fun, like, again, nod to the idea of him being like an American comic book hero. But yeah, no, this whole section's really good. Like, you have all the boring government people talking about it, but like, whatever. I like what they're talking about. And then yeah, you have the everything just kind of being in shambles and just kind of showing the aftermath. And specifically, obviously, which is the most relevant to us as readers, is I love this. We get to see the aftermath of what would the teachers think, or what would the parents think of letting their kids go back to this very dangerous school, and that All Might and Aizawa have to basically go to people's houses and talk about it. And you have the contrast of Jiro's parents who are like, bro, All Might's like my daughter's teacher and is like a badass, of course she can go back to the school. That's pretty rock and roll, bro. Then you have Bakugo's parents who they lean more on like, what did Aizawa, who is a teacher, say about my student? Well, he seemed to understand where my son was coming from, and I really appreciate that. And then of course you have Deku's mom, who's basically like, no, I feel very uncomfortable about this. Let's talk about that. And we can go over kind of each of those if you have any thoughts. But I really like that they didn't do all of them, but they had 3 different perspectives that would make the most sense. Someone who's just like hardcore, like, nah, I trust you, bro. You're All Might. Someone who's like, Aizawa, I trust you because you seem like a good teacher. And then finally the pushback and having to have a real conversation.
Yeah, and well, I don't have too much to say on Bakugo and Jiro's parents. Like, with Bakugo's, the most important part to me is the hints we get towards Bakugo's current mental state. Like, where he asks All Might, what is Deku to you? And then All Might gives him, the bullshit answer. And Bakugo's like, oh, okay, so I guess you don't want to talk about it. That's cool. I think that's really neat because it sort of just sows the seeds that something's going on in his head. And we'll get the payoff for that quite a bit later, actually. Like, over, what is it? Almost 30 chapters later. We have to let that stew. And the Deku one is the big one for me. Because we talked earlier about, MHA holding itself to a higher degree of logic. And I think this is very emblematic of that. It's, the mom would absolutely object to Deku going back to UA. And yes, it makes her, in the eyes of the audience, less likable. And it does sort of stall the story for like 2 chapters for reasons that frankly aren't really necessary if you just want to look at it pragmatically.
Well, and also if you're just like assuming, yeah, of course they're going to let him go back.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've established this entire cast. No way is he not going to go to UA. But the fact that the series nevertheless decides to do this because it wants to respect the intelligence and the logic of the audience and its characters is one of the most admirable traits MHA had. Because, Inko should absolutely object to this. And I also like a second part to this, which is when Deku gets up and slams the door, and we are, supposed to believe that this is, his teenager moment. He's like, no one gets me, and runs off. And,
his
Inko even gets up
and be like, Dad, he Mom won't listen.
Yeah, but, Inko even gets up to get him, and then he comes back, and he's like, fine, it doesn't have to be UA. What matters to me is becoming a hero, and I will not be childish about this, because while I am, young and a teen, I can recognize my priorities here. And again, that is both a subversion of what you expect in the moment, and a mission statement for MHA, saying our characters are not stereotypes. They're not just shonen boys. They're living, breathing people who have priorities and internal logical deductions that mean that they follow these priorities even when the story might go in circles of it because of it. And that's something I tremendously appreciate about these chapters, this willingness to not just move forward, but to take the time to establish the logic these characters operate on. And of course, we get a more emotional moment as well when Deku's like, I got this letter from Koda, and this is the happiest I've been because it really made me feel like a hero. And then we get All Might, bowing down to Inko. And that moment is just, God, dad vibes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like whenever someone asks, where is Deku's dad? He's right there. He's always been there.
For sure.
Who cares about the biological one?
Yeah. Well, and sorry, did you want to finish talking about that scene?
No, that's honestly all I had already.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. You summarized all that perfectly. What I wanted to add to is this idea of like there's a lot more nuance to like why she says yes, because she doesn't say yes because of what All Might says. Well, not in response to All Might. Like All Might did not convince her. What convinced her was that she says is when All Might says like I will die for your son. And it's not that he says that. It's the fact that to her son, obviously, she knows that All Might is this great hero who means a lot to him. And that seems like that's it, is that she's like, well, he's saying that he's going to die for my son, and that, obviously that shows me he cares. But then, two, that shows me, then, I can trust him, but I don't want him to give up his life. I want him to live. And we probably wouldn't talk about it otherwise, so there's a really nice moment afterwards where All Might's like, she told me to live. No one's ever really told me that, which is a really sad idea of, like, like his role as a hero is, like, sacrifice yourself, So that's a great moment for All Might as well. But the moment that really sticks with me, and the anime ruined it completely because they cut it and moved it to the start of the next episode. So you think the emotional catharsis is her saying yes, and it kind of comes off a bit rushed of like, okay, All Might had his big speech. I guess she's fine with him going back to school. But then you think like, okay, but he just said that he was going to like help raise him. Couldn't you say like he can go to a different school and you can still help after school? Or like, why would this like so thoroughly change her mind? The point is still about her son, right? And that's correct, because the moment right after she says like live or whatever, and he's like, I will, is that Deku says like, okay, I won't make you worry. And she's like, don't look at me like that, or like, basically saying like, don't lie to me. But the thing that the thing that clicked for her is that she says, the fact that somehow, without me noticing, you became such a man, basically, that your hero is bowing to have you, means that you have grown far past what I thought, and I know that this would make you very happy. So I am going to let you go. So it's not All Might. It's the fact that because of Deku, this great man All Might is willing to bow for her son, and she is so proud of him that she is like, okay, I still hate this. And she still says it in her head, like, I don't agree to this or like this. But she does not want to, like, pull that away from Deku and his accomplishments, which is, like, such a, like, mom thing to do, of, like, being proud and all these things. And she doesn't want to take that from him. And that's the thing that I think so many people kind of miss. Because, again, the All Might thing is such a big deal. The Deku thing is such a big deal. But the thing that cinches it is her being like, I am so proud of who my son has become, that Superman is saying, can I adopt him? So I will not take this away from him.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very, very nice reading on this. Is there anything else you want to say about the house visits, or do we move on to sort of the last part of what we read?
There's one thing I just want to mention, which is a scene we skipped, which is them on the beach. I love the Texas Smash punishment spanking, I guess, where All Might punches him. But I think the part that is a really nice emotional moment, especially in the anime, because you have the music and all this stuff. It's not whenever he's like, didn't I tell you not to be a baby, and like All Might actually cries, but it's the part where like Deku's like, the light sting on my cheek was the final thing that told me that yes, the reign of All Might was over. And it's like that. It's like, my heart.
Yeah, like just the casual confirmation that not even like, it doesn't even hurt when you get hit by him anymore. Like it's just gone. And that, yeah, you're right. That's such a bittersweet way, and such an elegant, like also like just lyrically, an elegant way to tell that. Yeah, no, that's a great moment for sure.
Yeah, but so then we move on to the final section if you want to go over that, because there's a bit of build-up to lead into it that's kind of interesting, so I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, do you have anything to say on it? Because I was going to go just straight to like the rooms and stuff.
I was just going to say, I like the scene with Bakugo where he kind of repays Kirishima, and he kind of tries to make everyone laugh and kind of give a good vibe with Kaminari. I think, I can understand people every time I watch reactions to this, they're like, I don't understand this scene. And I guess, like, if you're trying to think about it logically, like, it might like throw you off of like, okay, how did he make him electrocute himself and it didn't hurt him or something? Why did he do it? Blah, blah, blah. But to me, it just always clicked into place that he's just a very awkward, edgy boy, and so he's just trying to lighten the mood, and he knows that people think it's funny when Kaminari laughs, and it's like a cartoon thing of like he probably just like went behind the bush and like whacked him on the head, and then lightning went off, and it didn't hurt him because it was for a gag. Like, I never thought this scene was complicated, but I know a lot of people get really confused by it, like what Bakugo is doing, what does he mean? And I'm like, I never had a problem with it, but that's what I think is happening, so... And I like that for them. And I also like Aizawa's thing of kind of being like, yeah, we'd expel all of you. Anyway, have a nice day. That's a good moment for him. And it sets the tone of like what Sue talks about later of like the vibe is kind of changed because it's really awkward that like these five kind of broke the law and are kind of like the problem children, and we didn't, and also we tried to stop them but they still went. They feel a bit weird. So yeah. I mean, like, how did you ever interpret the little Bakugo moment? Did it ever confuse you, or what do you think?
I don't think it's ever confused me. It definitely has sort of given me pause a little whenever I read back over it, because it's not sold super well in the anime. In the manga, it flows a lot better, I feel like. Because in the manga, it feels almost like, you know, a newspaper gag. Go behind bush, electrocute, dumb guy comes out, right?
Yeah, and they're like tiny, tiny panels
laughing.
too, to like sell like the minutia of it.
Yeah, whereas in the anime, they don't really focus on the fact that it's that it lightens the mood. They show you the thing that happens, and you see like maybe Jiro laughing, but you don't really get this feeling that this was done to lighten the mood. And then when Bakugo gives Kaminari the money, it kind of just almost leans into this idea that, oh, he just mugged Kaminari. Yeah, which obviously isn't what happened.
Which Kirishima even says, but I feel like your brain is reacting to it while he's saying, "Did you shake him down for cash?"
Exactly.
So
yeah, exactly. And so I feel like the anime in general is not good at translating the manga's comedy. I feel like it often doesn't work out very well when it comes to timing. You talked earlier about the twice moment as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think the way they could have fixed it is basically have like, you know how sometimes to sell a gag they'll have like the person will be moving and then it will cut to black for a sec and there'll be like a doop, and then they'll be in a different position. Yeah. That's how they should have done it, of like Kaminari, huh? Doop, doop, zzz, doop. All right, and then he's out.
Yeah.
And then they go, what?
That could have actually worked.
Then it would have been clear this is a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. Yeah. So finally, we lean into the room competition. I'll let you take away on this one.
Yeah, so this is one of those things that can really only happen in MHA, where it's just 2 chapters dedicated to just going around and looking how these kids live. And it's not like insanely funny, and it's not like insanely emotional. It does get a little bit of an emotional beat at the end, but what I like about it is just the fact that it happens, right? Like just the fact
insanely
that
cute.
The series... Yeah, that the series can take this time, especially after something as huge as this just happened. It feels like a more digestible version of what Joint Training was trying to do, of just being like, hey, we know the plot is happening and we'll get to that, but these are kids. Why don't we get to know them a little? And, you know, we get these little details about them. If anything, if I have one problem with this scene, is that it doesn't give us enough, like, specific things about certain characters, like Sero and even Kaminari and what have you, like Ojiro. I feel like they're too understated even. I would have wanted Hori to give them like something weird in the room. Like I love the moment where they enter Shoji's room and they're like, there's nothing here. And he's like, I'm a simple man. And Todoroki's like, aye, brother, I feel you. Like that's such a small moment, but it like that's how you humanize a cast. You have them bounce off each other and you have them have opinions and specific preferences about things.
Or like Sato, Sato, like obviously he would be into probably making food, but then the fact that all the girls are like, yes, please, and then like Kaminari and Minette are like, he's swooning them over, he's winning them over, that monster. And then he gets all flustered because he's like, all the girls like his food, and they're like, "Can I help?" Momo's like, "Can I help make you something with you sometime?" He's like, "Oh my gosh, what?" And then he wins. Like that's what I always say about when people say like, "Who's the sugar man?" I'm like, "Are you disrespecting the Room King?"
The Room King, yeah. Yeah, no, it's such a sweet moment, and it really just goes to show what MHA can do when it just slows down, when it stops just rushing. And instead focuses on, hey, look at these characters and find out like tiny insignificant things about them. Because that's how you build human beings at the end of the day. And with MHA as a long-running shonen series, that is immensely valuable. Because you're going to be spending years with these characters probably. So yeah, those are sort of my quick-fire big thoughts on this.
Yeah.
So what do you have?
A gag I really love is that Mina and Ochako steal Ida's glasses and they wear them for the rest of the room competition. So I love them going into his room and they'll be like, there's so many glasses, and then like the next scene they're still wearing them. Like, dude, you stole that man's glasses. I love Momo's just like giant bed that like fills the whole room. She's like, he's the size of my closet or whatever. Just a lot of like character moments like that are really cute. I love Todoroki's of like, this isn't even designed the same. How did that work? It's like, I remodeled it in a whole day. He's like, yeah, I work hard.
Like, what's his problem?
Yeah, what's your problem? That's great. There's a lot of tiny little moments that really add to like the vibe. And I will, like I told you before we started, I think the quote at the start of the second part of this is like the epitome of what I used to love about these types of MHA chapters, is that there's like the narrator, and I think it's Deku, and he's just like, last time we spent a whole chapter dedicated to a Room King competition. Are we actually gonna do the same thing, or are we actually gonna do the same thing for another chapter? And it's like, yes, we are. And it's like, that's what I love about MHA and these sections, is that they are just like, no, we're just gonna do a babysitting arc. Screw you. That's what we're doing now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just gonna do a room competition, because why not? It would be fun. What? We don't have time for fun. Nah, I think we do. Why not?
Yeah, this is what we're doing now. Cope. And again, whenever it did that, it was always in service of like character work, not big character stuff. Just, hey, find out more about random person number 20.
Yeah, the thing that makes you care about.
With a cast like this, it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is always a thing that I just have a disconnect with. Like, I think like general anime or just story criticism is this idea of like the adherence to like loving the idea of something affecting the plot for like the sake of it, or like people will be like, well, I saw this this review of the new Sonic collection. This isn't going to get too off topic, but they added these new cutscenes to it that basically just are just like cute little explanations of like context for the classic Sonic games, and they're really cute. And the person was like, but they don't add anything new, so they just kind of feel like fluff. Now, it's 10 out of 10 perfect fluff, but it doesn't affect the plot. I'm like, then just say it's good. Like that, like this, and that's the thing that I think this people get, will be like, oh, it's cute or whatever, but what does it mean for the plot? I'm like, who cares? What it does is that I want to know about these characters, and so that's what it's adding to, is that when these characters are talking, I'm not bored. When these characters in the Class 1A arc or whatever, when they go and do things, I'm going to be like, oh, I care about these people, and I want to make sure they don't die. Like, that adds to a narrative. There's a difference between the plot and the story. For the plot, you don't need Suyu to have her little emotional scene at the end. For the plot of, let's move on to the next thing. But for the story of eventually all these characters are going to return, and they're going to come to Deku and say, you're our friend, then this is integral to the story.
Yeah, like, it doesn't contribute to like the wiki Spark Notes version of the story, but what it does do is it prepares you to care for it when it does happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that a lot of stories can miss too, like where you can have a story that is too involved with its lore or its plot, or its its plot talk or whatever. It's like, I don't know you. Why should I care? And so that's what I think MHA did a really good job at, is it made me care. And like, I don't know about other people, but I don't come to stories for the sanctity of a story being told properly. I come to stories to be entertained and to feel things. And so if you can do that through making me care about the characters, which is the thing I most care about, because characters are a reflection or an abstraction of people, which people care about, then yeah, you should spend time with these people and give them time for me to warm up to them. Then you can put them into situations. Can you do both at the same time? Absolutely. I just don't think there's I don't think if someone came to me, basically, this is how I would put it. If someone came to me and they said, hey, we're going to redo the Kamino section, and we're going to give it like a perfect adaptation in the anime or something. And then they said, but we're going to save on that, we're going to cut out the room competition, because it doesn't matter. I would say, like, no, you can't do that. That would make the story, to me, if you cut the room out of MHA, it makes the characters worse. And to me, that's pretty. Absolutely. And to me, if that's not integral, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that a lot of modern, like, casual media criticism really fetishizes the idea of plot efficiency. And I mean, it's an important thing, but at the same time, part of plot efficiency is also knowing when to slow down and give the audience something more, yeah, something more emotional to latch onto, something that isn't immediately paid off, but nonetheless prepares you to care when the time comes. And so, yeah, no, you put it really well that if this isn't integral, what is?
Yeah, and overall, I think the reason people like plot efficiency is I think everyone likes the same thing, which is that they want to be entertained. So I think when people say like, "Oh, it doesn't add to the plot," what they're really saying is just I didn't like it. Because you'll see on a lot of things, you might have someone who will be like, "I really love this movie, and I especially love this character. Did they add a lot? Not really, but it was super cool." And it's like, yeah. So what you're saying is, what mattered to you was being entertained. The stuff that was like fluffy or whatever, you weren't entertained by it, so you're trying to come up with like a logical reason that it didn't work from like a critique perspective. It's like, oh, it must be because it didn't affect the plot, and it's like, no, it just probably didn't work because you weren't entertained by it, which you can also not be entertained by plot efficiency. Post-war MHA. So yeah, but yeah, no, that's all I have to say on that. And I don't really have anything else to say about the Suyu thing other than that it is another example of the story sitting down and going a logical direction of like, I don't know how to feel about what I said. I still kind of believe what I said, but then I feel like I hurt your feelings, and then I don't know if you like me, so like, I just wanted the vibe to be cool, yo, and I just wanted to like have a hug or something, please. And it's like, yeah, that's cute. It's like the last good Sue moments.
I mean, we're already dipping into the negative sauce. So, do we want to pull off the curtain?
Yeah, let's reveal who the Scooby-Doo villain was all along.
Yes, because, dear listeners and viewers, you might have noticed that we very meticulously avoided talking about a certain someone more than a couple of mentions.
And very passive-aggressively.
And, very passive-aggressively. And no matter how much we pretend it did, MHA did not end with Dobby's dance, of course. And a lot of what has happened after Dobby's dance has made Kamino arc retroactively worse. And the main thing has a name, and it's called All for One. So, why don't we get started on that? Ian, what do you think?
Okay, so All for One is the worst thing to ever happen to MHA. This walking potato man. So let's get some things clear. So the big thing that is a problem is that obviously now with All for One, his character has turned into, like, he literally repeats the same things he said in Kamino, but he flips them. He says, now it's my turn. He says, now it's all for me. He says this at the end of the war, those types of things. And so to some people, so the big problem, right, is that this completely contradicts his character. His characterization throughout all of Kamino that they keep drilling into your head is this idea of a dark side of All Might, this evil teacher, mentor, who is passing on his torch. And we mentioned the scene of, like, Shigaraki comes to him, and All for One is giving him so much leeway and so much rope of, like, okay, you wanted this, like, kid who clearly doesn't want to work for you? Well, that was your decision. I will respect that so that you can grow. You have the Stain arc, where Stain is literally there, and and Kurogiri's like, this guy could hurt him. Should I take him away? He's like, no. He needs to learn. He needs to grow. And that's the key element of All for One throughout this whole section, and it's where your next scene ends on, is like, All Might, you chose the wrong time to bow out. Like, I'm leaving now, and so my successor can grow. He knows how to bring people together. He knows how to gain comrades. He screwed up his mission for sure, but he's growing, he's changing, and now I don't have to be there for him anymore because I trust him. And now this has been flipped, and now it's that instead of All for One wanting a successor, he wants a body. And this completely contradicts everything All for One has ever done and ever said. Now, the immediate rebuttal to this, if you like this twist, might be like, well, he's just lying. You know, All for One's an evil guy. He's just lying. Here's the problem with that. One, let's go from a not in story level. From just like from just a meta level of just like reading the story. Kamino spends so much time having All for One make these declarations of, I'm passing this on to you. This is all for you, Tomura. This is for you. This is for you. And time is spent on that. Like, not just like brief little mentions or like sneaky little gestures. No. the emotional crux of Shigaraki being taken away from his master is he's like, no, master, if I leave, you will die. No, master, if I leave, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to do this. All of that is gone now. If regardless of if it made sense, which it doesn't, which we'll get to, but I'll let you talk about this one point after I finish here. But regardless of if it makes sense, it actively makes reading Kamino worse, because every line All For One says in this arc towards Shigaraki, towards his big plan, in your head, you just have to replace it with, LOL, I was lying. And that's not fun to read, regardless of if it made sense. Actively reading this arc, because that's the thing we praise Horikoshi for, is that you get new context to characters. So now when you read early stuff in Kirishima, where he talks about being a man, he's not just saying, I want to be a man, and your brain goes ding, 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 ding. That's his gimmick. Your brain goes, oh, this is tied to, like, his idea of being a hero whenever he failed to protect Mina and his relationship to Red Riot. So it elevates it. It gives it weight and meaning. And unless you have bad memory, I cannot read Kamino and take anything All For One says as, like, anything other than, LOL, I was lying. And if that's what he's saying, then I should just skip all his dialogue. It's wasting panel space. So I'll stop on that point and let you go into that.
Well, my biggest issue is that Kamino sets up MHA as a story of parallels that essentially puts Deku and Shigaraki into the same boat on opposite sides of the fence, right? You have this idea that both of them are successors to a almost inhumanely perfect master for, their disciplines. And that they, without being ready, are thrust into the world and having to deal with a world where their master doesn't exist anymore to really help them. And this was one of the most elegant things MHA did, in my opinion. And this change, this shift, as you've described it, completely breaks that apart and replaces it, I guess, with, no, actually, it's about how All For One can't let go and how he cannot trust in his pupil. And that is where the actual thematic meat is, that it's not a parallel, it's sort of an anti-parallel. The problem with that is that it replaces Shigaraki with a much less interesting character, right? Like, All For One is fun if you have him for one fight. He's not fun if you have to listen to him say bullshit for an entire arc. And that also, retrospectively, as you said, makes this entire section in Kamino so weird to read about, because it's so focused on the idea that Deku and Shigaraki are parallels, and you again just have to look at that and say, okay, I guess that's just not true. This is just a waste of time thematically. And that is so frustrating to return to. It really did impact my enjoyment quite a bit when, All For One was talking about his side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I want to move on to the next part, which is that clearly you cannot convince me otherwise, unless you want to admit that Horikoshi is just incompetent in this situation. This is a retcon. The idea that All For One is, like, now doing this, like the way he's portrayed now in the manga, is 100% a retcon. Retcons are not inherently good or bad. This is a bad one. Because here's the thing. We have scenes of All For One in his head, talking to nobody but himself, saying, Shigaraki, you will be my successor. Shigaraki, it's your turn now. Shigaraki, grow and learn. So, just on a base level, unless he's lying to me, the audience, or he thinks there's a secret psychic nearby, then this just is a retcon. He changed his motivations. This is not congruent with what his character is. 2, this idea of Shigaraki being the symbol of fear, of being the next step, of being someone who is going to be his own person, who All For One wants to cultivate into his own being. We have scenes where the only person he's telling this to is the Doctor, his most loyal servant, who if All For One said jump off a cliff, he would say how high and how hard. So there is no reason for All For One to lie to this man, to sit there and have a scene that Shigaraki flashbacks to, where they're like, hey, he's really messed up right now, and also his quirk, he's like holding it back. should I just, like, mind wipe him and just, like, change his memory so we don't have to worry about this? No, doctor. We need to let this anger fester and flow and become something of like, genuine hatred so that he can become his own man. I will mold him and groom him. Because the whole point of him choosing Shigaraki is that he wanted to be so petty that he would take someone who is related to Nana and who would hurt All Might and make him genuinely hate All Might. None of this, and then we have the scene in the prison later where All Might's like, oh, I understand your plan. You want Shigaraki to kill me, and that to be the end of, it. He's like, yeah, and so what? Which again, if you're thinking like it's good, then you're like, so he's just lying, tee-hee-hee, that scene is worthless, but he was lying. Anyway, again, this makes no sense, because what does growing as a person, what does the 10 years that All For One just let him dick around and play video games, what does 10 years of, like, trying to make Shigaraki a better person, what is the letting him make mistakes, what's the point of My Villain Academia, where the point of that arc is the doctor says, you need to make Gigantomachia respect you so that he will be your servant. Idiot! That doesn't matter! He's gonna body swap him! What does it matter? And so that's the ultimate core of what this change does to All For One, is that one, it just makes him look stupid, because if he wants a new body, just make him go to the gym, mind wipe him so he has whatever memories you want, or just take his body if you have to. None of this... him becoming a symbol of fear, him having a group of people, none of that matters, because by the end of the war arc, he actively says, nah, leave behind Shigaraki's friends. We don't need them. That'll just make him mad. Leave behind Gigantomachia. There's no point to the training. There's no point to Shigaraki getting better. There's nothing. All of these plans make no sense. And the final nail in the coffin for me is just simply that it just makes All For One really boring. It's so boring, this idea of you set up these expectations to the audience of passing on the torch, you have him speak about this, you have him have this meticulously petty plan, and you have this idea of, like, Shigaraki is growing into a villain, and then you're just going to take away that interesting character for, LOL, I was joking, I need to take over your body. And the final thing is, if anyone says, well, the reason he needed to grow as a person is so that when he takes it from him, Shigaraki will have hatred, right? Because he says in the dream dimension, the more hatred you have for me, the stronger I'm attached to you. This does not work, because when All For One tries to take over Shigaraki's body, Shigaraki is not surprised. So there goes the hatred argument, and 2, the doctor says we can rewrite his memories, so just rewrite his memories to being an abused child that you did, and then just take his body. It makes no sense. It's all stupid. It ruins everything about Shigaraki, it ruins everything about All For One, and logically, it is clearly a retcon that was changed at a certain point to make All For One into the final big bad, so we can do whatever we're going to do with Shigaraki, so we can do whatever we're going to do with this big fight with his body. It's bad. It is completely bad. And All For One's continuing relevance into the story only makes the series worse. Because just like we talked about earlier, let's assume that Shigaraki eventually becomes the big bad. 1, we know this is the final battle, or at the very least we know the manga is ending soon. So Shigaraki getting to be the bad guy that he was being built up to be, he's going to lose immediately, and it's not going to lead to anything. And 2, even if that is done perfectly, heck, even if we got, like, another arc of, like, Shigaraki doing stuff, that does not replace the 30-plus chapters I had to sit around with this boring villain who took time away from the character I was interested in, which was the reason All For One was cool in the first place. Because he was saying, look at this other character who's cooler than me. It's bad, it's dumb. That's my rant. Sorry I went on for too long.
Okay. It's all good. All good. This is why we're here anyway. But to bring it sort of back into the context of the Kamino arc specifically, you mentioned how it makes All For One more boring, and I couldn't agree more. Like, All For One in this first appearance in Kamino is interesting because he does subvert your expectations a slight way. He is evil, and he is like this demonic, almost creature in a sense, but when he speaks to Shigaraki, there's almost tenderness. There's almost a sense that in his own twisted way, there is care for him. Care only to the extent of an instrument, of, a way to hurt All Might, But to Shigaraki, if you look at it from Shigaraki's perspective, he is a caretaker. He speaks to him softly. He supports him. He nurtures him. And all of that just vanishes with this twist, because now All For One's always been lying. He never had any care for anything in the world. And as you said, his entire thing with Shigaraki was pointless. And we can actually prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a retcon with one single piece of dialogue that All For One says in Kamino, which is that he doesn't take Genus's quirk because it wouldn't suit Tomura.
Yes, exactly. Yep, I forgot about that. Nope, go ahead.
Yes, because we now have seen in the latest arc that the vestige of All For One, and before anyone says that the thing in Shigaraki isn't All For One, it's a vestige, shut up. You know it's the exact same thing. The vestige inside Shigaraki can assume full control if it wants to, which means that Shigaraki's preferences towards quirks do not matter. That vestige can make him do whatever he wants, which means that this piece of dialogue that All For One was trying to, collect quirks that would suit Tomura make absolutely zero sense. Actually, hold on. I just realized something. It makes even less sense, because by the time All For One fights in Kamino, he already has the duplicate All For One quirk, which Shigaraki wouldn't be getting anyway.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I just noticed that.
And again, this ties into my thing of Gigantomachia, of idiot doctor. Why does he? Because they're not saying like you need to get stronger. Doctor, why does he need to prove himself to get Gigantomachia to trust him when it's gonna be All For One? There's no reason. Just tell him, you know what, Shigaraki, you're cool now. Go into the room. I'm gonna give you your power or whatever. Go steal 9 from the movie so we can get whatever research we needed or whatever. Put him in the tube. Wipe his memories so that he can have his awakened quirk, or fix his memories or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you just tell Gigantomachia, hey, guess what? That's the master, and I can prove it, because when he gets out, he's just gonna talk like him. You stupid idiot! And it doesn't make any sense. Sorry, we can go back to Kamino, but I just wanted to add that in there of like, no, guys, really think about this. My Villain Academia, the core premise, is ruined. The whole point was this was the culmination of him growing into a person. None of that matters. The whole plan makes no sense. Why not just give him the power? And we know, and we also know, even if the doctor doesn't know this, we know that the idea of like let's say you said like, oh, but it's not going to be his voice of All For One, so maybe Gigantomachia would get confused. Doesn't matter. We know this because Gigantomachia can smell spirits. So because later he's like, I smell All For One and Shigaraki. So no, it's bad. It's completely terrible.
It's terrible. It's awful. And again, to bring it back to Kamino one last time, because I do think we're starting to repeat ourselves. So I think sort of to end on a note, it's that Kamino was a huge paradigm shift for the story of MHA, but a big part of what made it so huge, which is this establishment of Shigaraki as the parallel to Deku, has just been yoinked out of the series completely. Like no anesthesia, no like drugs, nothing, just grabbed into the chest and ripped out. And that is such a fucking shame. I really, really hate that.
Absolutely. And there's minor versions of this with like the press. Wasn't it really cool when we used to care about what people thought of heroes and what the parents thought of their kids? Wasn't it really interesting how even though All Might, begs for her son to come to the UA, he never actually tells her explicitly, like, I'm the reason his body is breaking down because I gave him the quirk. So once she finds out about that, once the citizens see that their kids were put into a war zone, wouldn't you think that there would be, screw you, you have to go live at UA, so it doesn't matter. Deku's mom, she just talks to Deku, doesn't really talk to All Might, whatever. Endeavor really, really caring about, like, what this means for, like, his journey of, like in the fight, he has that one little moment of, like, reflection of, my journey was because of this. How does he feel now that he knows that he could have never caught up? How does he feel knowing that that All Might was given a power that he could never amount to? How does he feel about that and how that affected his family, that he was lied to? We don't find out.
Yeah.
How does
move on.
One of my favorite things of Deku, because I love Deku's micro progression of growing, is the scene where they talk about his arms, and they give him the 2 or 3 more times. And most manga, I would expect, would abuse that, and then have scenes where he abuses his body, but it's like, oh, we have 1 time, then we have 2 times, or whatever. But no, he instead changes, he does the very human thing of like, I don't even want to risk that. I don't even want to try to waste those punches. So I'm going to switch to kicking. And it's like, whoa, that's really cool how, and we'll get to that when we get to that arc. But like that threat, that idea of like, Deku, if you go overboard, there are consequences, and him learning from this. And then only for, in the war arc, for them to reiterate that, and then go, ha, lol, he got better, so it's fine. And also, we just bought things from the movie right before the ban on items in Hero Society was, lol, idiot, it's fine. Like, don't, who even cares? Like, I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we want to bring it back to sort of the logic motivation that we were talking about earlier, it's like the series has essentially completely abandoned its internal logic for the sake of just moving forward, of just always moving on to the next thing. And it only dwells on its characters and its events if those characters and events influence the narrative. And there is no thought given to anything that doesn't immediately move the story forward to the next cool moment. And I'm sure you've heard this, that MHA is changing editors again.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know, of course, that the editor we've had since the war until now, Taguchi is a guy who has a long track record of editing on very embarrassingly failed projects. So it's going to be interesting to see if this new person will make a difference. Because I remember when Taguchi was appointed editor, people were very worried. And I mean, while he was on, MHA has been in its darkest times. So I guess we will see how much influence that person really had over the story.
Yeah, I need you to learn Japanese, go to Japan and interview Hori and say, why did you ruin your series? So that he can say, well, originally I had intended all this really cool stuff. But then I talked to this guy, and he was like, here's some other cool stuff, and I listened to him, and I apologized greatly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because that's the thing, right? With manga, you never know how much power an editor has. Like, if you think about how Naruto was saved by its editors because Kishimoto had absolute bonkers ideas for the story. Like, do you know about Naruto's original draft?
Yes. I have indeed watched, I think it's called Oceaniz. Where he talks about these types of things.
Oh, yes. Well, exactly. So the problem is there, you have an immensely powerful editor. So it's always going to be interesting to see who or what and how this was influenced. Because, I mean, the one editor who was around during, between, what do you say, between joint training and the war, up until Dobby's Dance, that guy seemed all right, and he's been doing nothing but drawing Mirko fan art on Twitter all day, so clearly this was a person worth listening to.
If anyone's doing God's work.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so do we have any closing words on Kamino? Since I think this is a good point to end.
Yeah, I think so too. We've been going for 2 hours. So but yeah, no, and apologies to anyone for repeating, but I do want to hammer this home because I haven't seen anyone just like come out and fully say like, this is bad, guys. I mean, I know there's someone I know who's working on a video like that, but I just really wanted to like completely line out like, this is why All for One doesn't work. And I think that people take for granted how much he's ripped away and ruined from the series, not even just from the series itself, but from his own character. I really used to love All for One. And it's a shame I can't feel that way anymore. And it's a shame that he's kind of hurting the series in retrospect. So to me, I might get in trouble, but I don't know if I can really rate Kamino anymore. I think all I can really say is I love all the All Might stuff, but it just feels so weird to try to rate it now, and it's like, but all the things about it that are true, they aren't true now, but they don't even feel true to MHA. Like, they again, it feels like someone took over and changed the story. It feels like it did get canceled, and it got brought back like 10 years later, and someone who didn't get it started writing. So I don't think I can really rate the arc anymore. All I can say is that I think it's it has peak MHA moments with All Might, and I think it has a lot of really great stuff for the kids, which I think hasn't been taken away. I think if any character comes away from this arc as like when you look back and it adds, people for years were getting on Ida for never really having anything after this, and I really think his reintroduction into the manga completely solidifies his role. Even if he wasn't around all that time, it shows this is what his core was, and this is why he needed to come back when they rescued Deku. This really means a lot. So if anything, there are characters who are, Horikoshi can still write great character stuff. He has not lost that ability. But in certain ways he has. And so I just think with this arc, I don't think I can rate it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think my rating is plain and simple. This arc, Kamino, is integral, immensely important to the narrative of MHA. The problem is that narrative has gone off the fucking rails. And so now Kamino just looks stupid in hindsight. It looks like it was building up to a lot of things that in the end just got botched. And so while it is very exciting and emotional to go back to it, you cannot erase the fact that half of what it was building towards just doesn't exist anymore. Kamino is the great build-up to a hypothetical MHA that never got written. That's my rating.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think a lot, even if somehow it can scrounge together a lot of the things it promised, it's too late. It's too late. Too late. Even if it's great. With the newest Endeavor chapter, not the newest one, but the one that is officially out. It adds a lot to Endeavor, but it can't. And it also adds a lot to kind of like a little bit of All for One, and kind of like maybe like, oh, this is kind of what Hori maybe thought. Like, oh, I want to give Endeavor that All Might moment, so we got to bring All for One back, so that, XYZ. But it doesn't matter for what it took away, even if that moment in a vacuum it's like, whoa, it felt like I was really reading peak MHA again. And that's what I just want to leave parting with, is that no, the change with All for One has irreparably damaged the series, and that's unfortunate. So it is what it is.
Yeah, there is a time and place for everything, and in MHA, most of time and most of place was taken up by All for One being a dick. The end.
Thank you very much for watching the MHA podcast with Oceaniz and IanWaffles, your favorite MHA fanatics. If you would like to watch more of these, hopefully we'll make sometime.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and thank you, Ian, for being here. It was absolutely wonderful hearing your voice again.
Absolutely. I love being here, and just thank you for having me all the time, and thank you to the comments who are always so kind. So yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still I think last week got a couple of comments asking where the fuck is Ian. So like people like you, and I like you. So we can do this definitely more in the future. Hopefully, if I'm not a social mess for like 4 months again. But either way, folks, we will see you next time. And thank you again for tuning in. Ian, you want to plug anything, or you want to say anything?
Yeah, once again, I'm IanWaffles on YouTube. If you, again, are into something like Kingdom Hearts 2, I've been making a lot of little videos discussing how it integrates Disney and Final Fantasy. And I have an hour-long video coming out. It'll probably be here by in like 2 or 3 months about that topic. And so if you've ever thought like... the Disney and the Final Fantasy stuff in Kingdom Hearts 2, it's kind of worse. Well, I've got an hour-long video desperately begging you to believe otherwise, so look forward to that. And yeah, otherwise, I'm on Twitter. I don't really tweet a lot, but I do retweet, so funny images of scarecrows falling over. So, check me out there if you want. But otherwise, thank you very much for having me, and you guys have a great day.
All right, folks. Bye.
Bye.